We are going to go ahead and get started. Some people are still joining, but that's okay. Um, Good morning, good afternoon for those of you who are on the East Coast. My name is Emmy, and I work at Kodable. Welcome to the making of Kodable Creator Winter Spectacular. We are going to take the next 30 to 45 minutes, have a ton of fun. We're going to learn about the making of Kodable Creator. We're going to talk about our Winter Spectacular event, and then Greg, who is down below. He is actually going to teach you how to draw a character and a scene from our Winter Spectacular. So it's going to be really fun. And I'm just going to start by doing a few introductions. So there are three people from the Kodable team, as you can see. My name is Emmy. I am a former teacher, and I have been at Kodable now for about 2.5 years. We have Danielle, who also is a former teacher.
Hi,
And
everyone.
Thanks, Danielle. And then we also have Greg, who is the art director at Kodable. So those of you who are familiar with Kodable basics and our little fuzzes, Greg has been with Kodable a very long time and has designed all of the characters that you see in the game. So today will be really cool because you'll be able to see kind of how Greg comes up with these ideas and then how they actually end up within Kodable. All right, so what are we learning today? We're first going to start by talking about how the Kodable Creator Winter Spectacular was created. So we're going to talk about the process that the Kodable team goes through in order to come up with an idea and then actually have something that ends up within the Kodable game. So that's the first thing. That'll take about 10 minutes. The next thing is we are going to do a drawing lesson with Greg. He is going to walk you through again exactly how to draw a character from the Winter Spectacular game. You'll be able to ask questions then at the end. So the drawing will be about 15 minutes. And then at the end, while you're coloring in your picture, you can decide if you are going to stay and listen to questions while you color. Teachers, we would love to see pictures. So while your students are participating, if you want to snap a few photos or their completed drawings, we would really love to see what's going on in your classrooms today. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about how the Kodable team actually comes up with an idea. So we love the holidays. We were very excited to do a winter spectacular event. And so what we first do as a team is we always decide and we think through ideas. So the first step is always going to be brainstorm. So we thought to ourselves, what are some things that kids are going to really enjoy for this event? You can see in this bottom corner, this is kind of like our initial brainstorm ideas. So we thought through characters that might end up in the game. So you can see here, there are really cute little penguins or gnomes. There's a snowman on a snowboard, which you might see later. We talked about obstacles. So the things that when you're playing the game, the obstacles that you have to jump over, or the projectiles, the things that fall through this from the sky. So we come up with a ton of ideas before we even get started. And then you can see up here is we actually start writing out first what the game is going to look like. So this is kind of just like our brainstorm step. The next step is sketching. So this is where Greg and his talent comes in, is the artist at Kodable starts sketching some of their ideas after the brainstorm session. So you can see here, these are actually sketches that Greg created himself. He sketched this little cute penguin that is ice skating, this igloo, this little present. So a lot of fun ideas, and he kind of just starts putting things on paper. Now, this is where it gets really cool. The next step is Greg actually starts making digital art. So from his sketches, you can actually see here is the snowman on a snowboard, and the Candy King spikes. These might be things that you're going to learn how to draw later. You can see how Greg actually goes and puts them into digital art. I will show you exactly what that looks like on the next slide, but this is kind of like the next stage in the process. Now, once Greg puts and creates this digital art, it is time for us to actually animate. So what this is we use a program called Spine. So when you think about digital art, Greg goes onto the computer and he draws the art digitally that he created. Now, from that drawing, the art is not automatically going to move. It needs to be animated. And so what we do is we use this program again called Spine, and we actually figure out a way to get the character to move the way we want it. So you can see in this bottom right corner, the snowman has been animated to jump over the obstacle. And this is kind of what the platform looks like for our artists. And this is where they manipulate different things in order to get the art working the way that they want it, or moving the way that they want it. Teachers, also feel free, if you have questions along the way, we'll do the QA at the end, but feel free to ask them as we go along. All right. The next step is something that you all did during the Winter Spectacular, which is you actually learned how to code. And you programmed your game to do something. So the developers at Kodable do the same thing. So once the art is finalized, they use a program called Unity. This program Unity is a way for our developers to use computer programming concepts such as conditions, loops, functions, similar to how you used the same coding skills within Kodable Creator. So you can actually see on the right-hand side, this is what text coding looks like. And Creator, it looks slightly different because you're kind of manipulating blocks. But as you progress and you learn even more coding, this is what it looks like within Unity. So really cool. This is kind of where they decide how the game is going to function. And then after everything has been coded, something you also are familiar with is bugs. So bugs are mistakes that students make in coding and issues that you see in your code. So a bug is very common. It's normally just an error, your code is not doing something as expected, and you as the developer or the coder need to go in and fix it. So mistakes happen even as adults all the time. It's very normal. So something that we have is called a QA person, and that stands for quality assurance. And what this person does, her name is actually Helen. Helen actually goes in and she makes sure that everything is working as expected. So she's going to play through the entire Winter Spectacular game and make sure that everything is functioning as expected. There are no bugs and that students can get through the game properly. So that's kind of like the final step to make sure that everything is good to go. And then we release it and then you all get to play it. So at the end of that, the game is done. This is the completed Winter Spectacular game. We really hope you enjoyed a little behind the scenes to look at how a game within Kodable is started and then finished. So that just gives you a little background on what we do on our end and how we actually created Winter Spectacular for you all. What we're going to do now. Oh, last thing. These are other just really fun characters. You might recognize some from Kodable Basics, our fuzzes. These are some in the pets. These are some new ones that we have for Kodable Creator. We just released some really fun STEM courses where you can learn about the planets and you can learn about the ocean. And so these are some really fun characters that we just released within Kodable Creator recently. All right, I'm just going to check the questions. Okay. All right. So we're going to go ahead and get started with the art lesson. I am going to give you 2 minutes to set up. So no rush, but 2 minutes. And these are the things that you are going to need in order to follow along with Greg. You are going to need a horizontal piece of paper. So a normal piece of paper, but you're just going to turn it on its side. So a horizontal piece of paper. You are going to need a pencil with an eraser. If you don't have one, that's totally okay, but this would be great because Greg is going to show you how to draw your character and there's going to be some lines that he's going to clean up. And so it'll be really helpful for you to have a pencil with an eraser and then any sort of coloring utensil. This could be colored pencils, markers, crayons, whatever you have available to you. If you don't have any, that's totally okay too. You could just do the outline. But these are the few things that you are going to need. Okay. So I'm going to give you 2 minutes to get everything you need. If you're ready to go, feel free to put any questions in the chat. One more minute before we get started. All right, Greg, while everyone finishes up, do you want to go ahead and request sharing?
There we go.
Thirty more seconds, and then Greg will go ahead and get started. Okay, all right. Greg, take it away.
Thanks, Emmy. Yeah, we will be drawing a scene from our Winter Spectacular event. So let's just go right in. Let's start by blocking in our main composition. This basically means we're planning how big we want our objects and where we want them to be in the scene. So for this, we'll be drawing very, very light marks where we want our snowman and our candy cane spikes, which will be the main objects in the scene. All right, so let's start in this upper left-hand corner. We're going to make some very light marks for the top of the snowman. And then for the bottom of the snowman, we'll go here. And we want to make sure it doesn't go too far to the left. So we're going to make a small mark here and then another one here. Now, already I can see this might be a little bit too big, but we're going to leave it just like that. Then we're going to move over to the candy cane spikes, which will be on the right. This is our horizontal line, our horizon line. So we'll be making the same mark here. And then we'll be going about halfway up the page and making a small mark here. And then we also want to make sure these don't go too far off. So we're going to put a small mark there. And we don't want them to run into the snowman because he's trying to avoid these things. So let's put another one there. All right. I think we're good to go. So that's first step. Second step will be sketching the snowman. Let's start with a very light let's say like a kidney bean shape, but smaller on the top. So we don't want the snowman to be perfectly like this, just because he's in movement. And we want him to be leaning forward and kind of look like he's doing something. So um, let's just sketch this bean shape. We'll go sort of to this edge because we still have the snowboard we need to deal with here. And this is going to look kind of funny at first, but it's going to make sense in just a second. All right. That's basically what we're looking for. All right. So from here, we want to split it into three parts. One, the top, two, the middle, and three, the bottom. And then you can start making these circles that pretty much the snowballs that compose the snowman. So let's start doing that. And this kind of helps you just give a nice, it just looks better than it standing straight up. So we start carving this out. It's just like a block of clay. You start off with a nice block, and then you start putting in the details that you want. All right, we're looking pretty good here. Great. We got our main area of the snowman. We're done. No, just kidding. Let's move on to the snowboard. We're going to just make a horizontal line across here. And then we're going to have the lip and another lip that goes up. And we're going to do another horizontal line that goes straight through this guy. So let's do that. And then we mimic that same line. We do it over here as well. And then we're just going to connect them. Don't worry if it goes off. We made sure that the main snowman got on screen. Great. And then this line here, we're just going to double that right underneath it. Feel free to make that one a little bit darker. Great. Now this is a sketch. We're sketching here. Don't worry about final art. We're not making final art. We are just having fun. Okay. Let's clean up a little bit of this. Feel free to use your eraser. We can clean up more later. Great. Okay, let's move on to some of the funner stuff, like the snowman's head. I'm going to zoom in here. Obviously, you guys can't zoom in, but this will help you see it better. So at the top of the snowman's head, we're going to add a hat. Now, we don't want to put it too low. We want to put it just at the top here so that we've got room for the nose, the goggles, and the mouth. All right, so let's start with the hat. We're going to do a small curved line right along the top. And then right where your mark is, or wherever, right above where the snowman's head is, we're going to add another one that is the same, but just a little higher. Great. Next up, we're going to add a little lip that goes right underneath this hat line that you made. You want to go over this a bit because it's over the actual snowball. So let's do that. You can tell this is already starting to shape up really nice. Great. Now the next thing you want to do is kind of a dolphin or shark fin on top. And it sounds weird, but when you draw it, it actually makes sense because you get to see this beanie hat in motion. And then if you want to add a puffball, feel free to do that as well. Great. So now the snowman's hat is on. We're going to clean up just a little bit. Cool. Let's move on to the goggles. For the goggles, we will want to do sort of a rounded rectangle. Now he is going to be facing this way. So his natural face line is about right here. That would be where his nose starts, right? So let's draw in the goggles. You're going to start with, like I said, sort of a rounded rectangle. Now these goggles will go over the snowman's head. So we want to go past the snowman's um, just the barrier there. And right where we made this mark here, we're going to put a little U. And this is where his nose will be. So let's finish this rounded rectangle. And then we're going to add a strap so that these goggles don't come off. Awesome. Okay. And next, let's clean this line up. That's gone. That's gone. Let's add some shines. I always like some nice shines here. Just shows that they're reflective. Let's do the nose. The nose would be a long V shape. I like to make them very big just because when we have our characters on screen, if you have things that are too small because the characters are so small, it's hard to see them. So we try to over exaggerate things just a bit. I'm going to add some little carroty details there. All right. If you want to, our snowman in the game does not have a mouth just because he is so small. It doesn't really make sense. But feel free to add one because it is the holidays and we should all be smiling. All right. Let's move on to his arms. I'm going to zoom out a bit. And we don't want these to go too far over because we want to see them. So we want to keep them on the page. He's got little branch arms. So let's start the first one here. You make a mark there. That one will be on top of this snowball. This one will be behind. So this mark will be here. All right. So we'll want to do two lines that are parallel with each other. And then we're going to do a bend here. Feel free to go over a little bit to make the stick arm. And then we're going to do a mitten. The mittens are just like two little cups, basically. So you get cup one, and then for the thumb, you get cup two.
Greg, do you mind just giving the kiddos a couple, like a minute or two, just to catch up a little bit?
Sure. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, guys, we're gonna give you about 1 or 2 minutes. Go ahead and look at the drawing, add what you've missed so far, if you've missed anything.
Let me zoom out. Oops, that's too much. There we
Perfect.
go.
Thank you. All right, we'll give everyone about 1 minute. All right, about 30 more seconds. Greg, moving forward, if you just want to give like 10-second pause just so they can kind of watch you do it and then have an opportunity to do it themselves. I think that'll be great. Not
No
a
problem. Yeah, we move so fast at Kodable, I forget.
Yeah, that's right. All right, we're going to continue on. But again, if you need us to slow down at all, just go ahead and put it in the chat again, and we are happy to do that. All right.
Cool. Let's move on. We're going to do the second arm. So our mark is here, and we're basically going to do the exact same thing. Two parallel lines with a bend, another two parallel lines, and using the size that you made the first mitten, you want to go ahead and draw the second one. Don't worry about how big they are. That's what makes your drawing different than everybody else's, which is good. All right, so now we have our mittens on. Let's draw a few buttons going down. So these will just be circles on his chest. And you could put another one down here if you want to. All right. Just darkening some of this stuff now that we have some decisions made. Great. Basically, now we have our snowman. I'm going to move on to the candy spikes over here. And we want to make sure it doesn't run into them. So we're going to start all the way over here. Now, how we're going to do this is we're going to start with small smiles. And you'll see what I mean in just a second here. It's a good way of showing how these spikes are poking out of the ground, and the ground is actually a flat surface. So let's start. Don't worry about copying exactly where mine are. But we're just going to make some nice little smiles or closed eyes. Let's start with that for now. Great. And then from here, we want to draw our spikes going toward the snowman or up to the upper left-hand corner. So we will be there's one. And because we can erase, we're going to add another one here. Definitely feel free to make these all different sizes. It really helps. All right. Let's do a few more. Let's make these a little bigger just because we have our line up here that says how big they can be. Great. And let's do one more here. The best thing about sketching is you can make mistakes. And that's what it's all about. It's basically studying something. When you're studying something, you're not sure how to do it at first. Okay. I'm gonna do just a couple small ones here. That should do it. All right. I'm going to clean up some of this and let you guys catch up a little bit. We don't need our finding marks anymore, so those can be gone. Great. Next, so that these aren't just ordinary spikes, we've got to make them into candy spikes, which means we need to add some stripes to them. Now, you might just be inclined to put stripes on like this. Obviously, that looks like it doesn't work. So you want to follow the form of these. And since they are cylindrical, you'll want to make sure that they are curved stripes. You could put some close to each other. You could put some far from each other. Don't worry about it. Just go all the way up on each one. Almost there. You got little stripes on these guys. And one more to go. And don't worry about coloring these in now. Later on, you guys can add the red to them. Now for the next step, we're almost done here. I always like to add just a little bit of shading to this, just so things feel grounded and they're not just floating in the middle of nowhere. So very lightly, I'm just going to add some shading underneath each one of these. Doesn't have to be a lot because this is against snow. But you can see already that these are already starting to feel like they're coming out of something rather than just a bunch of funny gnome hats that are in the middle of nowhere. We're going to do the same thing for the snowman.
And then we'll give everyone about 1 or 2 minutes just to catch up, finish putting your stripes on your candy cane spikes. You can finish shading. And then in about 1 to 2 minutes, Greg will finish up the drawing.
Yep. Yeah, the only thing left we have is to kind of give this an environment. Where are they?
Right.
The snow? Yes, of course. So we're going to be drawing some snow.
So yeah, make sure you add your shadows underneath your candy cane spikes, your shadows underneath your snowman and your snowboard. And 1 minute to do that. About 30 more seconds. Make sure you have your snowman buttons and your shading. About 10 more seconds. All right, Greg is going to teach you how to create the scene now.
Great. Yeah, just a couple small things to pull this all together. We're going to want to add a horizon line, which means where basically the land ends in back of the character and the main foreground objects, such as the spikes. So back right here, you don't want to go here. You probably don't want to go here because we're going to add some weird tangents. So there's a nice empty space here, which looks like it'll cut across all these really nice. So we're just going to do a very simple scalloped um, horizon line. And this is meant to mimic snow. It doesn't have to be perfect. If you got a couple larger lumps in there, it doesn't matter. If it goes up or down, that's fine. And then we will be adding kind of some foreground lumps. And they're going to be bigger than these. So you see, you've got these that are about as big as a mitten. These lumps in the front are going to be bigger, just to show that we've got some stuff in the foreground. And feel free to go off your page because that's how the world works. It's not just in your scene of view, there's other stuff as well. Add as many as you want. I like to add some texture to things, just like some little dots. Usually ends up helping. Give you a few seconds to finish that. And then the last thing we're going to be adding is some clouds because up here it's looking a little empty. So we're going to add a large cloud here. The way I do clouds almost all the time is just a nice flat bottom. And because of this, we have because of the snow, we've got these nice lumps. So we're actually going to mimic that. And this is called repetition of pattern, which actually helps pull your scene together. So we're going to mimic the snow up here, but it's in the cloud. Then you can add as many clouds as you want, big or small. Make sure to have them go off screen and kind of go behind the snowman so this all feels. And with that, we are basically done with our sketch. And you can feel free to color as much as you want. Be going like that. That's how the stripes will be colored in. But we don't have to get into the coloring right now. But you can see with just a little bit of color how this all can come together really nicely. We'll just do the spikes and leave it at that. Great, and we're done.
All right.
Thank you so much, Greg. I'm sure all of your drawings look so wonderful and so unique. At this time, if you want to keep coloring or adding more details to your work, you can. We have reached the Q&A portion of the demo, so if you have time, we would love for you to stay on and send us some questions in the chat, maybe for Greg about art or anything about Codable. We'd love to get back to you and answer some of those questions. If you do have to go, thank you so much for coming. Don't forget to take pictures of your art. And teachers, if you are able to get some pictures of your students' awesome work, you can send them to support@kodable.com. And the whole Kodable team would love to see all of your beautiful artwork. So it's right there on the screen, support@kodable.com. We'd love to see your artwork. Thank you guys for joining. You can go ahead and type any questions you might have in the chat, and we'd love to take a look and answer some for you guys.
Miss Hollis actually had some questions. Her kiddos had to leave for lunch, but I think they're really great questions while we wait for others to come in. But the first one was, how long did it take to make the game? So when we're thinking about Winter Spectacular in particular, I would say, Greg, what do you think? I would say 3 to 4 days for us to brainstorm, for us to come up with a plan, create the art, and then actually get it into the game. Typically, things take a lot longer because we are developing a lot of like game aspects. But with the Winter Spectacular, we already had the game template already made. It's the same one as Endless Runner within Kodable Creator. And so what was cool is we were actually able to just swap out some of the graphics and some of the things within the game to create Winter Spectacular. So 3 to 4 days-ish that it took us to actually get it created and QA'd and out to you guys. Another question was, what coding language do you use? So our developers who use Unity, which is the platform I taught you about earlier, they actually use C#. That's the coding language that they use. And then the last one was, what inspired the creation of Kodable? That's a really great question. I wish that our founder and CEO, John, was here, but something that he always shares is that when he was a little boy, he taught himself computer science, and he just realized how amazing it was that all of a sudden he was able to create and develop things such as a game. And so it really kind of inspired him to start Kodable and bring the same type of learning and excitement to other students. All right, let's see other questions. So one question, and Greg, this is a question for you. How many art pieces has Greg done for computer animation?
In general, or for just this in particular?
I would say, generally speaking, how much art do you think you've created for Kodable?
I'm gonna say probably in the hundreds of thousands.
Okay, hundreds of thousands. That's how much art Greg does. He is busy. Awesome.
Yeah,
Um,
and actually, because we have to create so much, like if you think about the snowman on a snowboard, we easily probably could have done something where there's a character running or a moose running, but because we try to move so fast and get things out to you as quick as possible so that you can have fun with it. The snowman was pretty easy. There's no legs, and he's basically just sledding across. So that means actually less pieces of art because you don't have to have the individual pieces of legs. So it's actually, we do try to reduce it as much as possible.
yeah, awesome. All right, we have another great question. It says, Greg, what is your favorite character that you drew in the Winter Spectacular?
It's the snowman.
Yeah. It's the snowman's a great one. I agree.
Yeah.
Snowman's very cute. I also really love the coffee cup. It reminds me of my like Starbucks latte that I like getting in the morning. So I also really like that. The collectible, it's called.
We got close to going with the penguin, but we ended up going with using him for the cross curricular.
Yeah, the stepped horses.
Yeah.
Awesome.
A lot of times we'll sketch something and it won't get used for that event in particular or project, but we keep it in the banks just because we've already drawn it. You might as well keep it and see
Yeah,
what we can use for later.
exactly. Okay, another question is how many different drawings altogether does it take to make the game?
Ooh, well, we have different objects, right? We've got obstacles, we've got collectibles, we have our lanes, we have our backgrounds, and we have our characters. And that's basically it. We try not to bloat the project with a bunch of extra stuff, just the things that are really necessary. So I think we had two obstacles, the mailbox and the spike. So that's two drawings. And then we have our two characters. We've got two different kinds of lanes, which is the rooftop snow and the brick wall snow. And we've got two backgrounds. But often many sketches go in before we actually create those. Oh, we also have our collectibles, which are the gift and the coffee cup. But we do a lot of exploring before to see what's going to work. And so a lot of those sketches, like I said, like the penguin, just don't end up getting used.
Awesome. All right, let's see. Someone wants to know, how did you get so good at sketching?
I spent a lot of time with my grandfather when I was young, and he wanted to be an illustrator like no other. He would draw all the time. It wasn't his main job, but every time we got together, we would draw. And that started probably about age 5. Um, yeah, and so I just kept going because every time I visited, I wanted to show him what I'd learned, and he wanted to show me what he learned as well, and it just progressed. And then he actually paid for my grandparents with my parents actually helped get me into art college, and from there started in with educational games.
That's awesome. I didn't know that story. That's really cool. Um, Another really great question related to going to art school is what courses at school did you have to take to get a job like yours?
That's a great question. When I was going to college, there were choices. You could learn tools or you could learn the basics of art. Because all these new tools like 3D art and stuff like that was coming out, it made more sense for me to learn traditional art rather than these tools because you can use traditional art and learn the tools. You can't. It it doesn't work as well the other way around because tools do go away, but traditional art does not. You can always use the tools with the traditional art. So that's how I started. I was actually in one of my classes, and a teacher came up to me, a professor, and she's like, I have a friend that's in a new startup, um, and it's based on neuroscience, and they're teaching autistic kids to learn, to read and such. And so I interviewed and I started as an intern way back in 95. And I've been doing educational games ever since then.
Amazing. Oh, this is a good one. What was your favorite drawing that you've ever done?
Oh, drawing. That's that's like singling out a favorite color. I don't know if like adults really have favorite colors. They just kind of for me, I like all of them. Um, yeah, I can't even imagine. I can't say. But yeah, I really can't say. I've done so many drawings, probably about a million drawings in my time. So
So, yeah, definitely a hard question to answer.
yeah. Well, I did do an angel for my mom when she was in the hospital. I think that's probably my favorite.
Oh, that's really nice. All right, let's see. Someone asked a question, what makes you think of drawing fictional characters like this? Like, I guess another way we could say this is like, what's your process like when you are coming up with an idea? Like, how do you come up with your ideas?
Well, we gotta think simple. Um, it's a really good question because it's not because of what we do here. It needs to it needs to read for the audience, right? So, like again, with the snowman, when you make this really small, you can still see it's a snowman. You can still see that these are spikes. So everything is basically readability, and how it looks on screen. If you need to explain what it is, then you didn't do your job well in making it.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. All right. We're going to take a few more questions. If you have not answered or put anything in the chat, please do so. But another question we have is, how long can drawing take for you?
It depends on the project. Most of the drawings I do are not this good actually, because we move very fast. A lot of the drawings are pretty sloppy and not anything you'd want to put a frame around. But that's just because you want to make sure that just the idea is gotten and you've executed well. Um, so once I get the idea and I'm like, okay, this is going to work. I've been doing this so long that I can pretty much go straight to final on a very sloppy drawing. So the drawing process really doesn't take too long.
That's great. So what those of us who don't know what final is, what Greg means is that like he doesn't necessarily need to actually sketch everything out first. He actually can go straight to just drawing it digitally, because he has so much experience. But I'm gonna guess Greg at first, like you did need to kind of sketch and start slower, but now that you have so much experience, you're able to just kind of start digitally and go from there.
It really depends on the project. Some things I haven't drawn before, like they just haven't been invented. I can remember back to when I first started, mission control in Fustopia was not even a thing.
Yeah.
And I had no idea what I was doing. So, I mean, I knew how to draw, but I had no idea what these buildings were going to look like.
Right. Yeah.
Eventually, we went with like a whimsical tree house look, and it ended up working pretty well.
Awesome. All right, we have one more student question that just came in. How did he come up with the shapes that he started with to turn them into the finished project? Example, bean to snowman.
Oh, well, we in our college they always try to get you to do these gesture drawings before you actually start in on the final drawing. And gesture drawings are basically if you're in a movement, or it basically just captures the essence of the movement or the essence of the pose. Um, and you want to do that first before you start doing all the fine detail, because I've actually seen people like start doing like um, comic characters, and they start in on all the final stuff, and all of a sudden they realize that their character has two left hands, or the arms bending in a way that doesn't work right. So it's really nice to get a very loose idea before you start your drawing. And so that's where the bean kind of came from. Was we didn't want to go with like more of a Christmas tree. We wanted the character to be kind of bending forward. So it's just if there was a gesture drawing for a snowman, that would probably be it.
Nice. Let's see. All right. Does anyone else have any other questions? Those were all really great questions.
Yeah.
Gail and I even, I'm sure, learned something new because we are not artists. So this is very interesting for us as well. Oh, another great question. What was the first drawing that you ever did, if you remember?
I do.
Ooh,
I believe it was Garfield the cat.
nice.
And another one was, I remember I was drawing this character so much, this cat carry. I was probably about 5. And my grandfather's like, you know what, why don't you just draw a picture of water? And he was trying to mess with me a little bit. And it was funny because like, how are you going to just draw water? But I thought he said a pitcher of water. So I actually did draw a pitcher of water pouring into a cup, and he laughed pretty hard at that one.
Oh, that's cute. Love that. All right, we've about 5 more minutes for questions. If anyone else has any others. We'll give you about another minute to type it in the chat. Reminder, we would love to see your artwork or your students actually working in class. We will not post them anywhere, so if you want no student faces is fine, but otherwise they will not end up anywhere. But we would just kind of love to see your classroom as they participated.
For sure.
Oh, okay. Another question just came in. What was the first video type game did you ever draw for? So I guess first job. Not a
First
first
job
video game.
was, yeah, that would be probably that was the work I was doing for the autistic kids. And it was a game called Trog Walkers. And I was an intern. I was working with my friend Nick, and we were doing so well that the adults gave us a whole game to work on. And so he did all the backgrounds and I did all the characters, which was a bunch of walk cycles and cavemen, and the cavemen were racing against themselves.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Another great question is, have you done any sketching of movie characters? For example, Inside Out.
Not Inside Out, but I have done quite a few. In fact, as I get older, I'm really enjoying drawing things like Scooby-Doo and the Scooby-Doo villains and Ghostbusters, Slimer, all these things that I didn't and I couldn't draw so well when I was a kid. My favorite's probably going to be Batman, though. I draw Batman all the time.
Yeah, that's a fun one. All right, one more. Have you drawn any movie characters like Iron Giant? I know you just kind of answered that, but I don't even know who Iron Giant is, so maybe you do.
Yes, yeah. Iron Giant was one of the first Brad Bird movies, and he also went on to do Ratatouille
Oh,
and The Incredibles. Amazing movie. And I have not drawn the Iron Giant, but yes, definitely other ones as well.
I just Googled it. Very cute. I feel like I need to watch this movie now.
You really do. It's a great movie.
All right, we have 2 more minutes for final questions. Thank you so much for the feedback in the chat. We really appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. We hope you have a wonderful winter break. Happy holidays to those who celebrate. And we are really looking forward to seeing your drawings and hearing from you all. But if you ever need anything in the future, we are happy to help. You can always reach us at support@kodable.com and we'd be happy to help. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. It's been great.